Happy Friday.
You as well.
Thank you. Give me one moment to finish editing this file so I don't lose my spot. Good enough. All right. Welcome to the Friday call. I hope everyone's doing fine. This is section 3 SIRT, right? Maybe.
No, it is.
We are in the final stages of plan drafting. I went through and made some adjustments to the format and added the estimating table we've been using. So if I could get you to take a peek at section 3 here. So I guess mainly for Eric, since Randall's seen this a lot. Any initial impressions on the style, how we're organizing it, and the format, or anything you'd like to share?
The page itself, you mean?
Yeah, how it's laid out. Does it make sense? Does it seem organized?
1 second. Yeah, I like the links in each section too, with the not being some long drawn out, just a clickable link. That's pretty helpful.
Thank you.
I think the sections make sense. Yeah, I think as things kind of come up, examples of key metrics and things like that will be key. But yeah, I think it's looks good so far. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. What we need to do is to get the content of all the sections basically sussed out and good enough to start to share more broadly. My intention would be to share the plan with the full SIG and the TAC maybe next week, if we can get through some of this. And then eventually to the governing board, probably like the first week of December, after we kind of have some comment from the full SIG.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would need very specific kind of ideas of what you want finished. If I try and help, I got some things I got to get done before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But certainly see where I can chip in if possible.
Well, specifically, let's take a look at some of these goals and see if we feel the milestones kind of achieve those goals, and kind of give us a gut check on the estimates we put down. That would be very useful to do right now, if possible. So essentially goal 3.1 was we wanted to select our tools, get those deployed, and set up some type of recurring maintenance plan. So milestone 1 would be we select that. We're going to deploy it and then figure out what our annual needs are. Randall.
I got Vince set up and I was actually going through it, which is why I'm distracted.
Oh, okay.
I think we could have a conversation about it because actually a lot more simple than you would think.
And the reason I brought up Vince again, I mean, we've talked about it several times, is that it provides us a facility that if someone wanted to report something to us directly, it's a known means of attaching people that are involved in that disclosure. It does keep I believe it. I think it encrypts the communication, I hope. Basically provides some level of confidentiality as we go through, and it allows the researcher and the maintainer to decide who gets included in this. And then at the tail end of it, we could tack on things like write a CSAF advisory or shoot something out to the OSS-SIRT mailing list when we're done.
I sent a link of screens they have on how this works on their platform. But it is public, Rob, just for you know. It is, so in other words, like the vulnerability notices themselves are public, the cases are private, but the vulnerability notices themselves are public.
You mean the disclosure advisory?
Correct. Because there's yeah. So this part right here is public.
But that again gives us a common tool that we definitely have the ability to customize or improve as we see fit.
Well, that's where maybe towards the end of this call we can switch into this conversation, because there is a conversation here to be had. Because the reality is that it's not as complicated as you think it is, but it is a problem if we're going to talk about vendor agnostic and whatnot. Because essentially what Vince is, it's a bunch of AWS services glued together.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot to it, but yeah. That being said, there's some things that we could possibly improve on, being OpenSSF, and we also have OSV, which is already hooked up to GitHub, which is why I wanted to talk to you about that, because that's what I'm looking into right now.
Okay.
So yeah. So I can deal. We could skip 3.1 for now and go to 3.2 if you want.
Sure. Looking down on the section 3 plan for recruitment, we are going to create a job description. We'll review that with the SIG. We'll post that out and talk to the foundation to start a vetting process. And the idea here is we are collecting member organization donated security people that will be volunteering towards this effort, since we decided we wanted to be a volunteer team. We will select that initial group of volunteers in milestone 4. We'll train and onboard them, and then we will figure out some type of how we're going to do this annually. Is there going to be rotation? Do we need to do re-education periodically? So we'll figure that out there. So any questions or feedback about the milestones or the estimates below there?
I do have one question in style syntax, because I see that we have both CERT and OSS-SIRT throughout the document. Is OSS-SIRT what we want to use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some obvious requirements of the education group probably on the training, right? Yes. So assuming that those are good to go, then and obviously that's being worked on to some degree.
Well, and that's what this group will need to formally approach that group, saying we have a body of work we need help with.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, this goes back, you're obviously in all those meetings, right? So it's the conversation about the personas and who needs that training, sooner rather than later. So yeah, and what that material looks like, not just taking like the developer certification, but what above and beyond those types of things are required. So yeah, I mean, they look good. It's just, I think, definitely need to nail down, what that training is going to look like prior to, probably I would say before recruitment, obviously. So we'll have to nail that down.
Right. And we talk about that more specifically in section 2.2.3, I think. Yeah, staffing requirements. So we talk about training, the skills we need, and well, before we're all done, we're going to need to have a requested estimate number of volunteers for the first year. That'll be a requirement of us here.
Yeah, it's volunteers versus paid spots, right? You have to.
Yeah, we'll be hiring a program manager as part of this section 3 to help execute the plan and then to help do reports and coordinate things. But yeah, the team is going to be all member volunteers.
Crow, you have a typo in M2. I think that's supposed to be role. You have ROILE.
Royally. Yep, I do. Let me correct that.
Yeah, this looks good to me. For the record.
Thank you. Section 3 here is where we actually, and this is the group that would need to engage with the education SIG. This particular goal is developing the onboarding documentation, playbooks, and then training to help get the volunteers up to speed.
Sorry, that's my dog in the background.
You were muted.
Couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you know, my neighbor's dog isn't going crazy for one.
This is about like the regular state for my dog is snoring in the background.
We can't.
Then Amazon will show up and she'll wake up and get all, you know, hyped up.
Yeah.
3.3 also looks good.
Goal 3.4 was actually working on reporting and metrics. So this is dependent upon hiring the program manager, but basically, depending on what services we end up, we need to figure out what metrics we need to collect and what reports we need to generate. I see another typo. We'll need to define how those reports are going to go out to key stakeholders. We'll need to train the program manager on these and how to track them. And then that person will need to create some type of periodic report out.
On 3.3 also we're using SIRT, not OSS-SIRT. I guess it doesn't really matter because we're talking about the SIRT instead of the OSS-SIRT, but just saying.
Second, I'll correct that while I correct my typo.
Add a couple typos in here. It's impacting year 1.1 and define repoperating.
Oh man, repoperating, that's my favorite. Any other thoughts around this? Does this seem?
This looks good to me.
All right.
I mean, obviously, want to automate some of this wherever possible.
Looks good to me too.
All right. And then section 3.5 was establishing a postmortem culture. Basically, anytime we have develop a process that anytime we have incidents or engagements with reporters or upstream, we're going through and reflecting upon that, creating lessons learned, and being able to improve our overall processes there. So basically, it's creating the process, creating some type of survey, creating an executive report in case key stakeholders want to watch in on that, and then train the program manager again on how to execute on this process.
You got the year 1 right at the beginning.
Oh, where?
And it says, in order to define and better understand our successes and impact in year 1, and then you have the number 1. First line of 3-4.
First line of 3-4. In order to better understand impact of year 1. Yes, I do.
Out of curiosity, why are service level objects and indicators in parentheses?
It shouldn't be. It should be the reverse. We should have service level objectives and SLO in parens and SLIs. So I'll correct that.
For 3.5 on the postmortem, right? Should there be an additional step once the facilitation of the process is there and the stakeholder feedback collection? Should there be some planning phase as well, where planning for the next stage, so we know what the postmortems, the issues were, all of that? Should there be, is there a scenario where there'll be additional tasks that the program manager will have to, set up, like, a phase 2 part of the process to fix those issues from the postmortem? So we're creating them all,
Yeah.
and then there's, what's the step after that once they facilitate the postmortem? How are they tracking that somebody's actually acting on any of the postmortem tasks that may come up?
Yeah, I'll add that. Implement postmortem findings. So implement postmortem improvement findings back into existing processes.
Yeah, something like that. And track any existing tasks, something like that. So, I mean, you may also find some, follow-up fixes that may be needed, right, after this lesson learned. Additional staffing, or not just process, but there may be project specific stuff they need to facilitate with somebody else to get moving on, not just the data collection. So not the best way to word that, but
all right, I added track improvements to ensure completion, timely completion. Anything else on the post-mortem item?
yeah, so I mean, 3.6 is hiring the program manager, but M2 is training the program manager. So there's some
I was going to suggest that too, moving it up to 3.1.
Doing which?
Yeah, so 3.6, right? You have hire program manager, but in 3.5 M2, you're training that person. Right.
That is specifically on this process, so we could move that down to the whole hiring the PGM, or we can keep that here with the postmortem piece. I don't, that doesn't matter. Whatever.
I'm wondering if the hiring the program manager has to come before the postmortem is my kind of.
We could change that. Yeah.
I would probably say it should be at the top.
All right. I will make hiring the program manager.
I mean, is that just part of 3.2 in recruitment, or is that is recruitment just more the process of recruiting?
Recruitment is specific to the volunteers.
Okay, so I would put that if there's an expectation that that manager helps to manage the volunteers, then I would say that needs to be 3-1 or it needs to be 3-2 and everything else needs to fall underneath it.
All right, I'll move it up to 3-1. And readjust the numbering subsequently. All right, so let's take a look at that. Hire the program manager. Any feedback on those items there while I go back and adjust numbering?
You have a typo there on the cert. It's like a capitalization thing, but
Is that my little T again?
yeah, you have it twice.
Ugh.
That seems good to me.
Yeah. Managing is misspelled on M3 of 3.6 as well.
It is. Thank you.
I installed Grammarly, the free version on my computer, and it pretty much takes care of all this for me. It tells me where I continue to mess up everything up because my spelling and grammar are terrible. So
does it work on web stuff?
Yeah.
I was going to integrate it into our pipeline, but then it started getting real aggressive. So I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, I'll have to look for that. All right, I've got the two.
Working on my master's and they require it. So I just installed it everywhere. So
I would have loved to have had that back when I did mine.
There's also another one called Hemingway app or something like that. That's free and open source.
Yep.
That's not bad either.
Probably.
Grammarly is free also. Just they have a professional version, but the free one is usually good enough.
Yeah, that I have Gentoo pay for mine. But yeah.
All right. So any additional feedback on currently 3.6 will be 3.1.
Structure looks good to me.
All right. I think that was the bottom. Any additional feedback on this section at this time?
No, I don't see any additional problems. It's good to me. Although, one of the things, obviously, you have some of the links around milestones and other things and these arrows for stage year 1, or I don't know that these arrows are necessary unless they're links somewhere. Are they going to be links at some point?
How did we end up with that, Randall? Who put that in there?
Which links? The
little arrow under stage.
The little arrow under stage.
The blue and white arrow. I thought we inherited that from you and Glenn from the education.
Oh yes, that's actually something I did.
Okay.
That's just an emoji.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's fine if they turn into links to something else, but it's kind of,
that was just because if I put start year 1, it breaks the table sometimes. And I was just trying to make it look sexier. So yeah, that's the only technical reason as to why I did that, because if you actually write start or end, the variation in that kind of screws up the table.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. When I look at something like that, I assume
You thought it was useful, or
Yeah,
you some kind of utility. Yeah,
clickable in some way or another. But
we could make them, I think, like just arrows if you wanted to, but then they're black, so they don't look as good on the black background.
Yeah, no, you can leave them. Like I said, it's not that big of a deal to me. I was just curious because they're there and they don't seem to have a function, so that's it's fine. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not an overly OCD person or anything where I need. Not that there's anything wrong with people who are.
Can I merge 28 probe? Basically
Yeah.
what I did is I made a configuration, and I'm going to do this to all the repos. So if you actually wanted to just go in and format all the documents automatically, you could. It just runs them through Prettier and then basically through Markdown lint. So then if you are trying to commit something, basically you won't have that X telling you that you can't commit it because it failed.
Yeah, I'm right here when you push the button.
Okay. I was just wanting to let you know before I push the button.
All the checks passed. Oh, but there's conflicts that need resolved. So I'll let you figure that out.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I know what those are. Yeah. Yeah, I'll figure that out.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right. So now that we have done a brief review of the section 3, let's talk about the tooling a little bit. And if you want to stay around, Eric, great. If you want to leave, great. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, it's not that I don't want to stay around. I'm gonna mute myself. I'll be back in just a minute.
All right. So let's talk tools.
Cool. So here's the bottom line. So let me be honest with you. Actually, Vince is actually a very simple application to build.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
So they didn't build a whole lot of it. Like a lot of it's actually just configurations, and like all of it is AWS basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we could use that. Like, so here's my first question. Let me just tell you straight. Is there a benefit to using Vince, or could I like pull OSV, and because I could like remake Vince in like a weekend with Astro. And it would be not dependent on AWS anything. It would just be JavaScript.
The benefit would be the fact that that is a tool that is in use today by the vendor PSIRT community.
Correct.
And CERT is very well established entity within the vulnerability disclosure community.
Correct.
So it would be kind of giving back and showing appreciation for their efforts if we were able to contribute to that project. Technically, if it's not fit for purpose, then it's not fit for purpose. And if we can do it differently.
Let me put it to you this way. It's just the way that it's built. It makes you go through a lot more cruft than you really need to nowadays.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line. Why I ask.
If we're able to improve it and kind of get rid of that cruft, that benefits everybody.
Agreed, but that would require you like throwing out Django, because Django is that cruft.
Okay.
It deals with a lot of that cruft. And at that point, you're kind of left with a bunch of configurations to just use AWS, which you no longer need.
Yeah,
so
which that's a big blocker anyway, because we want to be multi-cloud or
So that's what I'm saying. Like I could even make it like 100% compatible with their API, because it is all open source. Like I just sent you their vulnerability note API. I can produce the exact same thing. So I can make it work exactly the same. Just under the hood, it's not running a bunch of AWS services or Django. And it's easier to contribute to, because kind of is a lot more modern, kind of where like front end developers, what they're playing with nowadays. Make sense?
It does. No, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's been I think a bar to them getting contributions, is the fact that it is so intimately tied.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like Glenn's thing too, because basically this is the same thing I went through with Glenn's with SKF.
Yeah.
And that's why we decided to rebuild SKF and Astro and in Solid and using graph databases. But it's not a difficult app. That's why I'm asking. Like, I can Gronk something like this together and make like a proof of concept fairly easy. And I can make this vulnerability note API work exactly the way they have it. And I don't need to use Cognito and all of those AWS serverless stuff that they're using. Like, I can just use straight up Kubernetes stuff, which is I
Yeah.
think aligns better
Yeah,
with
well, it- ultimately,
OpenSSF.
if we have any cloud infrastructure, the default credits we get are from Azure.
Right.
So we would need to overcome that hurdle as a step one anyway.
Well, that would be the way that we would. So Glenn is not wrong in what he did,
Mhm.
except the fact that you have to make a Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
And basically running it on Azure is essentially running it in your own Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
And as you know, chances are is that next year I'll probably be like around a lot more. So
Yeah.
if things happen, I will be around where I can like, be the de facto IT guy.
So let's start an issue and let's put it underneath goal 3.2 now, which is the tech stack.
Mhm.
And let's start to gather requirements for a OSS-SIRT.
Because let me also say this
Cool.
real quick, just for Notion. So if we wanted to rebuild Vince, one way that you could go with it, again, you're kind of married and that whole thing, but I'm just saying you could take Firebase and do exactly what they did, because all they did is they took Firebase, glued it all together, and that is Vince.
Mhm.
But you run into that same problem. Now, what happens when I don't want Firebase anymore? You're
Right.
stuck in Firebase.
Yeah.
So that is the same thing. Now, there is an open source alternative called Supabase, but it just came out. It's not very mature, not something that I would use professionally yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. And let's get an issue and start to gather requirements for a incident handling tool for the CERT.
Okay.
And
Because they do have OSV, and I think that we can integrate that. And I know it doesn't get a whole lot.
That's just a database, though, isn't it?
It's a database, but it also aggregates GitHub security advisories, PYPA, which I don't know what that is, Rust security, and the global security database. So it's all merged.
Yeah,
and they
but
even have scanners.
It's not an incident handling tool.
No.
It doesn't allow you to get like a case management queue. It doesn't have like
No, but Vince,
private communications.
No. But what I'm just saying is, in terms of this, Vince uses CV or CVEs, I believe, the Common Vulnerability Database.
Yeah, which is the industry standard, which is what we will want to use. And if we output in other formats, we would want that as well.
Correct.
And is the workflow, it goes into OSV and then CVE. I don't know yet. We need to work that out.
That's what I was going to suggest, just so that it was more OpenSSF like, not to mention it aggregates everything.
Well, it's the world runs on CVE regardless
Correct.
of what the fringe element says.
Right, but you also know there's a big opinion about how CVE is broken.
People can have a fucking opinion, man.
I know.
Every enterprise on this planet uses CVE.
Correct. Okay.
That is an indisputable fact, regardless of people's religious beliefs.
Yeah. I get it.
So are you just looking for an issue tracker, or what? If you're, like,
that's what we're gonna
project or something.
We potentially need to figure out, get some requirements of is there a set of tools? Is it one tool that we're going to use to do case management, communications, be able to include people into the disclosures, to be able to output to things like OSV and OSS security lists. Our new the Siren proposal we have about making like a communications service at the back end of things.
Yeah, it's a small detail, really, because they only use it for the UDID sometimes.
Yeah,
and the vulnerability.
Yeah, the getting a vulnerability identifier is the next to last step of the process.
Right. Well, I think the main thing about it is producing this vulnerability node API, correct? Because that's what people query.
Again, think about, you have a security researcher that doesn't know what open source project to go to. How do they contact us? How do we keep that private until we can find the right parties? and get them talking to each other.
But then I'm saying that after that, I'm saying like the use at large would be for somebody to query this vulnerability note API.
Well, I don't want to own a vulnerability identifier database. That's a lot of work. I want to outsource that, right source that to NVD and OSV and everybody.
Fair.
That's,
Okay,
that's
so we
the
don't
tail
even
end of the
need-
process. I don't.
Because if I'm not mistaken, they're two different things, right? The vulnerability note is completely separate from the,
Like you talk about an advisory, like
well, from my understanding, the way Vince works is when a reporter comes in and opens up a case, it gets assigned a vulnerability ID or a VUID.
yeah, that's just for tracking. Yeah.
Right. And that also has an ID number. Now that's basically what is the vulnerability note API, because essentially like the communication is held private, but the actual vulnerability note that it gets created is publicly available and queryable from the outside.
At the end of it, yes.
You're right.
When you're ready to go public, that's we would want to probably think about part of this proposed tool. We may want the one of the outputs to be like an electronic machine readable advisory, like using the CSAF standard.
Okay. All right.
That it automatically does that, so the maintainer doesn't have to worry about that. It's just done.
Right.
You push a button, make advisory. Bloop.
Right. Okay.
And we collect enough information in the workflow tool that it can automatically do that, and then barf it out as a JSON file at the end.
Yeah. It should be fairly simple to do. It's not very complicated. It's just, as I said, I come from it more as an engineering background more than security.
Yeah. But that's, we need to protect all that. Or if there's a maintainer that needs help, like, hey, this researcher contacted me, the SIRT needs some type of, case management tool, some type of workflow management tool that we can help, organize ourselves.
Right. Fair.
And, we have in the discussion Francis put together, we have a list of tools, and, they may or may not work. And, Vince's maybe something, or making our own is another option.
Right. Okay, cool. So I'll put that in the discussion you said, right?
Yes. What was your statement, Eric?
I was just going to say, if you're looking for something kind of like a Jira or whatever, open project is free.
Yep. And I put Jira and Confluence as an option, and Atlassian is a member of the foundation. So that's, again, something maybe we can negotiate. Can we get some credits donated so that we could leverage this tool? And we'll get the religious debate that it's not really open source.
That's why I mentioned open project, because it is. And that's what my COE team has been using for years.
Yeah. And I will say that 80% of the vendor P-certs on the planet use Jira.
Yeah, I know. It's a good tool, but
it's okay. It's all right. It's a little big for our needs, but I want to get in our ask before we go for budget requests. We will need some type of case management and workflow management tools. So we need to get a bill for that as we're going to the governing board, because I don't think that'll be inconsequential if we're hiring developers or paying licenses or paying somebody to cobble together a bunch of stuff.
Fair. I will get you figures on all that this weekend.
Yeah. So if we think we want to hire some developers and, either write or make a composite application ourselves, cool, let's get that in there. And that way we can explore and figure that out as we go along.
Fair.
And we have, in that discussion from Francis, we have a bunch of suggested tools already. And that's probably one of the next, that's probably a decision we're going to need to make sooner rather than later, once we get this plan more or less done.
Right. Okay. I will get you figures on that, and I will try to figure that out. All right. I will try to do and I will just throw something like a stub in there for BYI. And did you want me to open another issue about what our requirements are for said tool?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And let's make that like a milestone under 3.2.
Cool.
Make it the new M2
Okay.
and just
What
shut
I-
M2 down.
What I would propose, just because this is kind of the way that, or I guess I wouldn't propose this. I guess what I'm suggesting is I think to do what Vince did, like from a technical perspective, wouldn't take very long.
Yeah.
I think what would take longer and what would need to be scoped out is when you talk about things like secure communications, that can't be done in a weekend.
Right. And that's why I also want the tool to be ongoing and have it be configurable and adjustable to our needs. So I want to have a body to do that.
So what I'm saying is if I build a proof of concept so that I can give you legitimate estimates and I committed that somewhere, would that be useful?
Yeah. Yeah. And don't kill yourself over the weekend, man. It's
Well,
holiday.
it's either
Not
this or
coming up.
video games. My wife's working all weekend, so.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna go
after.
play some video games after my next call is what I'm gonna go do.
Yeah, but then I get too into the video game and I forget the world exists and, you know, harder to come back to the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, okay, that's great information. I'll look into that. I'm gonna do the documenting first,
Okay.
and I will leave that for this weekend's project, and
Okay.
I'll see what I can muster up, but I
All right,
think.
don't spend your whole weekend doing it.
No, it'd probably take me a few hours. You know that I do this for fun. So.
I know. And we appreciate it.
I know. But yeah, but I will definitely look into that, maybe get something going and maybe get you guys something to look at next week, which might even help push the plan along because it might be like visuals and stuff.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, thank you both for your time. I need to go refill my water before my next exciting call.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you both of you. You too.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Bye.
Cheers.